John was a simple farmer who lived alone in a quiet valley. His days were long and filled with hard work, and his nights were silent except for the sound of crickets and the soft wind moving across the fields. Life on his farm was lonely, but it was safe, predictable, and ordinary. That is why, when something strange began to happen in his old barn, it felt as though the world itself had shifted. One late evening, after a long day of working the land, John went into the barn to gather tools. The air inside was heavy with the smell of dust and hay. His lantern threw long shadows on the wooden walls, and in the far corner he noticed something unusual. Beneath a pile of hay, there was a large, old blanket. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than forgotten cloth, maybe left there years ago by his father. But there was something odd about it. The blanket seemed heavier than it should be. The hay that covered it did not sit naturally, as though something beneath was pushing against it. John frowned. He did not remember ever seeing that blanket before. Slowly, he stepped closer, his boots crunching on the barn floor. His lantern light trembled as his hand shook. He reached out to touch the blanket, but before his fingers could brush against it, he heard something that froze him where he stood. A whisper. A low, broken whisper, almost like a voice carried on the wind. "End me now." The words were faint, but clear enough to make his blood run cold. John's lantern nearly slipped from his hand. He spun around quickly, his eyes darting across the barn. Nobody was there. The doors were closed, the windows shut tight. The sound had come from the blanket. He stared at it, his mouth dry, his heart hammering. "End me now." The whisper came again, a little louder this time, filled with sorrow and pain. John stumbled back a step. The voice was not human. Not fully. It was rough, deep, and yet broken, as though it came from a throat unused to speaking. His mind screamed at him to leave, to run, to pretend none of this had happened. But his feet would not move. He was caught between fear and curiosity. He raised the lantern higher and slowly crouched near the blanket. It shifted. Only slightly, but enough to make him gasp. The fabric rose and fell as if something beneath it was breathing. John swallowed hard, sweat running down his back. He whispered to himself, "It cannot be real. I am tired, I am imagining this." But then the blanket moved again, more strongly this time, and the whisper returned, drawn out and trembling. "Please, end me." John's skin prickled. He could feel the weight of something ancient in that voice, something that carried not only pain but centuries of sorrow. He wanted to scream, to call for help, but there was no one to hear. He lived miles from the nearest neighbor, and even if someone came, what could they do? His hands trembled as he reached forward, gripping the corner of the blanket. He stopped. A sudden coldness filled the barn, as if all warmth had been sucked out of the air. The lantern flame flickered violently, casting strange shadows on the walls. John's breath came in short bursts. He pulled his hand back, shaking his head. "No, no, I should not," he muttered. He stood up quickly, stumbling backwards until his back hit the barn wall. His eyes never left the blanket. It lay there, still, heavy, silent now, but alive with dreadful presence. For long minutes, John did not move. He pressed his hand against his chest, trying to calm the wild beating of his heart. He thought of leaving the barn, of locking the doors and never opening them again. But even as he thought it, the whisper returned, softer this time, almost like a breath in his ear. "End me." John's legs nearly gave out beneath him. He dropped the lantern on the floor, and the small flame flared up before settling. The light fell across the blanket, and for the briefest moment, John thought he saw something beneath the fabric. A shape. Large, curved, and unnatural. Something that did not belong in his barn, or even in this world. His heart froze as the thought formed in his mind. There was a living creature under that blanket, and it wanted to die. John could not look away. Every part of him screamed to run, but something held him there. Something about the voice, about the sadness in it, kept him rooted to the spot. He whispered shakily, What are you?" The barn gave no answer except for the sound of the wind outside pressing against the wooden walls. The blanket lay still again, but John knew it was only waiting. He felt it watching him, even without eyes visible. The night outside grew darker. John finally forced himself to back toward the barn door. His hands fumbled with the latch, his eyes never leaving the blanket. Just as he pushed the door open, the voice whispered again, filled with pain, filled with despair. "Please, end me now." The sound echoed in his head, following him as he stumbled out into the cold night. The stars above shone brightly, but John did not notice. All he could think about was the blanket in his barn, and the terrible thing that whispered from beneath it. That night John lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. The lantern beside him had long gone out, but sleep would not come. His mind replayed the sound of the whisper over and over again. The voice was not a dream. It was too sharp, too clear. He had heard it with his own ears inside the barn. The words had cut into him like a knife. "End me now." His body was heavy with fear, but his thoughts refused to rest. Outside the crickets sang, and the wind pushed against the windows, but every little sound reminded him of that voice. He turned on his side, then on his back again, pressing his hands over his ears, but he could not silence the memory. Hours passed, and finally he closed his eyes, trying to force himself into sleep. Just as he drifted toward the edge of rest, he heard it again. A whisper, faint and broken, but this time it came from the distance. From the barn. His eyes flew open. He held his breath, listening hard. The house was still. The sound of the night was normal. But then it came again, low and trembling, carried across the silent yard as though the darkness itself had brought it to him. "Please, end me." John sat up, his heart hammering in his chest. The barn was nearly 50 yards from his house, but the voice reached him as if it had been spoken from the next room. His hands trembled. He wanted to pretend he had not heard it, to tell himself it was the wind, but he knew the truth. Something in the barn was alive, and it was calling to him. He lit his lantern again, but he did not move toward the door. Instead, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, trapped between terror and disbelief. He whispered into the empty room. "Why me? Why here?" Of course, no answer came, but his question hung heavy in the air. The hours crawled by, and when the first gray light of dawn entered his window, John was still awake. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands unsteady. He forced himself to rise, dress, and walk outside. The morning was crisp, the grass damp with dew, but the beauty of the sunrise gave him no peace. His gaze locked on the barn. It stood there silently, a shadow in the light of day, but to John it looked alive, like it was waiting for him. He forced himself forward, step by step, until he reached the large wooden doors. For a moment he placed his hand on the latch and froze. His stomach twisted, his mouth dry. He remembered the blanket moving, remembered the shape beneath, remembered that huge weight pressing against the air. His mind screamed at him to leave, but his hand pulled the latch anyway. The barn door creaked open, and the smell of hay and dust met his nose. The inside looked the same as always, beams of light falling through the gaps in the wood, dust floating gently in the air. His eyes went straight to the far corner. The blanket was still there. It lay in the same place, silent and unmoving. For a long moment John did not enter. He stood frozen in the doorway, afraid that if he stepped inside the voice would return. But curiosity burned inside him. He could not let it go. Slowly, he walked across the barn, his boots crunching on the floor. Each step echoed in the silence. When he was only a few feet away, he stopped. He waited. The blanket remained still. "What do you want?" John whispered, his voice shaking. For a moment there was nothing. Then the whisper came, soft, broken, and filled with despair. "End me now." John shivered. His heart pounded as he took a step back. He wanted to run, but again something rooted him to the spot. He stared at the blanket and forced out another question. "What are you?" This time the answer did not come as words. Instead, the blanket trembled. A low sound rose from beneath it, not quite a growl, not quite a sigh, but something in between. The air in the barn seemed to vibrate with it, as if the sound was too deep for the human ear. John covered his ears, but it did not help. The sound was inside his head, crawling through his skull. He fell to his knees, gasping. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. Silence filled the barn again. John's chest rose and fell rapidly as he tried to breathe. He stared at the blanket, sweat dripping down his face. He whispered, "You are not of this world, are you?" The blanket shifted once more, and this time a faint glow slipped through the edges. A red light, dim but alive, pulsed like the beating of a heart. John scrambled backward until his back hit the barn wall again. His eyes widened as the whisper came for the third time. "End me now." It was slower, weaker, but deeper too, carrying weight beyond human pain. John's breath came in short gasps. His mind swirled with terror and confusion. A creature that glowed. A voice that begged for death. A sound that rattled his bones. He could not explain it, but he knew one thing. His life had changed forever. He pushed himself to his feet and stumbled out of the barn. The sunlight outside struck his eyes, but it felt thin and unreal. The world around him seemed distant, like he was walking in a dream. His farm, his home, his land, none of it felt safe anymore. That night he locked the barn doors tight with chains, something he had never done before. He told himself he would not go back, that he would leave whatever was inside to itself. But when the darkness fell again and the stars appeared overhead, he heard the voice. It carried across the fields, soft but clear, pulling at him with invisible threads. "Please, end me." John buried his head in his hands, rocking back and forth in his bed. His ears burned with the sound, his heart with fear. He knew the truth he did not want to admit. No matter how tightly he locked the barn, no matter how hard he tried to ignore it, the whispers would not stop. The sun rose again, but John felt no peace. His eyes were red from another sleepless night. The whispers had come again and again, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, sometimes sounding almost like a growl mixed with human words. He had covered his ears with his pillow, but the sound slid through wood, through walls, through his own thoughts. When the first light of morning touched the fields, John knew he could not continue like this. Something inside the barn was calling to him, and if he ignored it, he would go mad. With shaking hands he carried his lantern and walked toward the barn. The chains he had wrapped around the door rattled as he pulled them free. His heart told him to turn back, to leave it sealed forever, but his mind whispered that answers waited inside. He pushed the door open and stepped into the dim air. The barn smelled the same, hay and dust, but the air was colder than before. His breath came out in mist, though the morning was warm outside. The blanket still lay in the corner, heavy and unnatural. He swallowed hard and moved closer, each step slow, each heartbeat loud in his ears. The whisper did not come this time. The silence was worse. It was as if the thing beneath the blanket was waiting for him to act first. He crouched down, his lantern light flickering across the fabric. His hand trembled as he reached for the corner. For long moments he hovered there, afraid, sweating, his body screaming to pull away. But something stronger pushed him forward. He pinched the edge of the blanket and lifted it just slightly. The world seemed to stop. Beneath the blanket, in the faint glow of the lantern, he saw something that should not exist. Scales. Dark red and black, as if carved from burning coal, each one glistening faintly with an inner light. They rose and fell slowly, as though with the breath of a living chest. John's mouth fell open. His throat was dry. He lifted the blanket a little higher, and then he saw it. An eye. Huge and round, glowing dimly like a dying fire. It blinked once, slow and heavy, and when it opened again the eye fixed directly on him. John froze. He could not move, could not think. The weight of that gaze pressed down on him harder than any storm, harder than the earth itself. The eye was old, impossibly old, filled with sorrow so deep it seemed endless. And then the voice came again, not a whisper this time but a direct sound, low and shaking the air around him. "Please, end me." John stumbled back, dropping the blanket, his lantern almost falling from his hand. He pressed his back against the barn wall, his chest heaving. The blanket shifted as the thing beneath moved slightly, and the sound of scales sliding against wood filled the silence. John's mind spun. A dragon. It was the only word that made sense, though the creature's features were hidden. The scales, the size, the eye, they all belonged to a legend, a creature that had no place in the real world. Yet it was here, in his barn, covered in sorrow and begging for death. His voice cracked as he whispered, "What are you?" The dragon's eye blinked again, heavy and tired. Its voice came in a low rumble, broken, painful. "Alone, so long, end me." The words cut through John's chest. He felt fear, yes, but also something else. Pity. The eye was not filled with rage or hunger. It was filled with exhaustion, with despair deeper than any human could know. John shook his head, unable to understand. His farm, his quiet life, his simple world, how had it become this? Why had such a creature come to him? The dragon's eye closed for a long moment, and John thought maybe it had died. But then the blanket shifted again, and a faint glow pulsed from beneath, like the beat of a weak heart. John found his voice again. I cannot kill you. I do not even understand you." The dragon gave no reply, only a soft rumble that felt like a sigh. John slowly lowered the lantern, his hands shaking. He did not dare uncover more, afraid of what he might see. Already his mind was stretched thin by the sight of scales and that terrible eye. He stepped backward, inch by inch, until he reached the door. His hand found the latch, but before he opened it, the dragon whispered again, softer this time, almost fading. "Please." John's heart ached with fear and confusion. He wanted to run, to lock the door and never look back, but he also wanted to understand. He stood there for a long time, staring at the blanket, feeling the weight of the creature's pain. Finally he stepped out into the daylight and closed the door behind him. His knees almost gave out as he leaned against the wood. He breathed hard, his thoughts racing. A dragon. An alien. A monster. Whatever it was real. And it was asking him for death. That night John sat at his table, staring at his untouched food. His mind replayed the image of the glowing scales, the ancient eye, the voice begging him. He felt as though he had been chosen for something he did not want. The barn seemed to pull at him even from a distance. He could not eat, could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that eye staring back at him, filled with sorrow too deep to describe. And he knew, no matter how much he wished otherwise, that this was only the beginning. The next day John tried to work in his fields, but every swing of his tool felt heavy and useless. His mind was not in the soil or the crops. It was trapped in the barn, staring again and again at the memory of glowing scales and that massive sorrowful eye. He could hear the whisper in his ears even while the sun blazed overhead. "End me now." The words haunted him like a shadow he could not escape. By the afternoon he gave up on work and sat on the edge of his porch, staring at the barn across the yard. He knew he should walk away, maybe even burn it down, but something deep inside pulled him back. This was not just a beast. This was something greater, something that carried a secret larger than his small world. As the sun began to set and the sky turned orange, John stood up and forced himself to walk back to the barn. The chains on the door rattled as he unlocked them. The air inside was cooler than outside, still carrying that strange, unnatural chill. The blanket still covered most of the creature, but the faint glow pulsed softly through the edges. John stepped closer, holding his lantern tight. His voice shook as he whispered, "I know you can hear me. What are you? Why are you here?" For a long moment there was only silence. Then the blanket shifted, and the deep voice rolled through the barn like distant thunder. "Exile, punishment, fallen from the stars." John's eyes widened. The words were rough, broken, but clear. "Stars?" he asked, his throat dry. "You are not from here?" The dragon's massive eye opened slowly again, glowing weak and tired. Its gaze locked onto John, and in that moment something heavy pressed against his mind. A vision. Not like a dream, not like imagination. It was real, a memory forced into his head. He saw burning skies filled with ships unlike anything on Earth. He saw fire raining down on cities made of silver towers. He saw creatures, dragons like the one in his barn, flying between the stars, their wings glowing like fire. He felt their power, their pride, their hunger for conquest. He gasped and stumbled backward, clutching his head. The vision ended, but the images stayed burned in his mind. His heart pounded as he stared at the dragon. You are not just a beast. You are. He could not finish the words. The dragon's voice came again, low and filled with endless regret. Once, conqueror. Now, prisoner. Banished. Alone. John felt cold all over. The stories he had read as a boy about dragons were nothing compared to the truth. This was not a creature of legend. This was an alien from the stars, a conqueror cast down, now dying in his barn. His fear was deep, but so was his pity. The voice was filled not with rage, but with exhaustion. Why ask me to end you? John whispered. The dragon's eye closed again, its chest rising and falling weakly beneath the blanket. Too long. Too broken. No return. Only death remains. The sadness in the words crushed John's heart. He stared at the creature for a long time, his lantern trembling in his hand. He wanted to run, but instead he spoke. If you were a conqueror, why should I feel pity? How many did you destroy? For a moment there was silence, and then another vision struck John's mind. He saw cities burning, yes, but he also saw the dragon younger, stronger, roaring in battle, proud and fearless. He saw alien armies cheering as the skies burned. But then he saw betrayal. He saw the dragon surrounded by other dragons, his own kind, turning against him. He felt the pain of wounds too great to heal, the humiliation of exile, the endless loneliness of being cast out and forced to hide on a world not his own. John gasped again as the vision faded, sweat dripping down his face. His voice shook. You were betrayed. The dragon's eye opened once more, dull and heavy. It gave a small rumble, almost like a bitter laugh. Glory, gone. Punished. Forgotten. John leaned back against the barn wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. His whole world had changed in only a few days. The universe was bigger than he had ever dreamed, and sitting only a few feet from him was proof. Yet the proof was broken, dying, and begging for an end. For the first time John spoke with something like courage. I cannot kill you. Not yet. I need to understand. If you came from the stars, if there are more like you, what happens if they come here? What happens to Earth? The dragon gave no answer for a long time, only a low rumble that shook the floor. Then slowly it spoke. They will come. Seek me. Find me. Find this world. Burn. John's stomach twisted. His small farm suddenly felt like the edge of a storm too large to survive. His hands shook as he whispered, Then why should I not kill you now? If they come for you, if they come for this place. The dragon's eye closed again, as if even the strength to answer was fading. End me, or all will end. John pressed his hands against his head. His thoughts were torn between fear and guilt. If he ended the creature, maybe his world would be safe. But could he do it? Could he strike down something that looked at him with such sorrow, something that had lived through ages he could not imagine? The barn grew silent again, but the weight of the secret pressed down on him heavier than ever. He realized the truth. He was alone in this. No one would believe him, no one could help. The dragon's secret was his to carry, and his choice would decide not only the fate of the creature but maybe of the whole earth. He staggered to his feet and backed toward the door. Before leaving, he whispered one last question. What is your name? The dragon did not answer with words. Instead, another vision touched his mind, a burning symbol, sharp and jagged like fire itself. It had no sound in human tongue, but it carried meaning. Power. Fear. Sorrow. John shivered as the image seared into his memory. He stepped out into the night, closing the barn doors behind him. The stars shone above, cold and endless. For the first time in his life, John looked at them not with wonder, but with dread. He knew now that Earth was not hidden. The ancient secret in his barn was proof of that. And he feared that the secret would not stay hidden for long. The following day was heavy with silence, but John felt no rest. He walked the fields with his tools in hand, but his eyes were not on the crops. Every gust of wind, every shadow across the ground made him think of the barn. He tried to force himself to focus on the soil, on the life he had always known, but the memory of the dragon's eye, filled with sorrow, would not leave him. The words played again and again in his ears. End me now. By evening, he sat on his porch, staring at the barn as if it were a wound in his land. The chains on the door glinted faintly in the fading sunlight, but they felt useless. The dragon's presence leaked through wood and iron, pressing against John's chest like a weight. He rubbed his hands together nervously, whispering to himself, "If I kill it, maybe it will all be over. If I leave it, maybe the world burns." His voice cracked. He had never been asked to make such a choice before. He was a farmer, not a soldier, not a hero. His only battles were with weeds and storms, not creatures from the stars. Yet here he was, carrying the burden of something far beyond him. That night, when the stars filled the sky, John locked his doors and sat at his table with a lantern burning low. He tried to eat but could not swallow. The whisper came again, faint through the still air, crawling through the cracks in his house. "End me!" John slammed his fists on the table, his chair scraping against the floor. "Stop!" he shouted into the darkness. "Why me? Why come to me?" But there was no answer beyond the same whisper, soft and broken. He pressed his head into his hands, rocking back and forth. Part of him wanted to take his old rifle, load it, and walk into the barn to end the creature once and for all. Another part of him trembled at the thought of looking into that eye again, of seeing that sorrow and then being the one to silence it forever. His chest ached with the weight of the choice. The hours dragged on, and finally he stood, grabbing the lantern and the rifle. His hands shook as he stepped outside, the night air cool against his face. He walked toward the barn, every step heavy with dread. The crickets sang, but even their voices seemed to fall quiet as he neared the chained door. His hands fumbled with the lock, the metal rattling loud in the still night. When he pushed the door open, the air inside greeted him cold and sharp. The faint red glow pulsed beneath the blanket, and the sorrowful presence filled the space at once. John raised the lantern, his voice weak but steady. "If I do this, if I end you, will it protect this world?" The dragon's eye opened slowly, its glow dim but steady. The deep voice came, weak but clear. "Yes, end me, hide this world from them." John gripped his rifle tighter, his hands slick with sweat. He lifted it halfway, pointing at the blanket. His breath came fast and uneven. But then the dragon spoke again, softer this time, not with words but with a feeling that pressed into John's mind. A flood of sorrow, endless years of loneliness, the crushing weight of exile. John felt his arms weaken. His eyes stung with tears he had not expected. He lowered the rifle slightly. "Why me?" he whispered again. "Why come here, to me?" The dragon's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Chance, fate, silence here. Safe, until now." John felt his knees bend as he sank to the floor. He stared at the creature's eye, so vast and heavy with pain. His heart twisted. He wanted to believe killing it would protect Earth, but the thought of ending such a life tore him apart. He had never killed anything larger than a fox, never looked into the eyes of something intelligent, something older than his entire species. He wiped his face with his sleeve, shaking his head. "I cannot do it. Not yet." The dragon's body shifted beneath the blanket, scales rasping against the wood. The glow flickered like a dying fire. Its voice came again, filled with both disappointment and strange patience. "Weak, human, heart." John looked down at his rifle, then back at the dragon. "Weak maybe," he said, "but I will not kill without knowing the truth. If you want death, you will have to tell me why. If others come, I must know what to do. I will not blind myself to this." For a long moment, the barn was silent except for John's heavy breathing. Then, slowly, the dragon's eye blinked. Another vision struck John's mind. He saw the stars again, but this time not burning. He saw them as they were long ago, before the wars. He saw the dragons not only as conquerors, but also as guardians, keepers of ancient knowledge. He felt their pride, their hunger, their mistakes. He felt the one before him fighting not only enemies, but also his own kind, refusing to obey orders that would have destroyed entire innocent worlds. He felt betrayal cut deeper than any blade, punishment harsher than death, exile to a lonely world, chained not by iron but by memory and shame. When the vision ended, John gasped, gripping the floorboards. His voice broke as he looked up. You tried to stop them. The dragon's eye half closed, weary but faintly burning. Failed, punished, now all is lost." John's rifle lay forgotten at his side. His compassion swelled against his fear. He could not see the creature as only a monster anymore. It was broken, alone, and begging for release. Yet he also feared that its death would bring dangers he could not understand. His mind was torn in two. He whispered, "If I cannot kill you, then I will guard you. Until I know what is right." The dragon gave no answer, only a low sigh that trembled through the barn. John stayed there a long time, staring at the glow beneath the blanket, the conflict raging inside him like fire. He had come to end a life, but instead he had found himself bound to it, trapped between fear and compassion. And as the night deepened, he knew one thing with certainty: his choice, whatever it would be, would decide not just his fate, but the fate of all humankind. The next morning John woke with the rifle still leaning against the wall, and the sound of the dragon's whisper still echoing in his ears. He had not slept more than a few minutes. Every time his eyes closed, the visions returned: burning skies, alien towers, dragons of fire and smoke soaring through the stars. His mind felt torn between terror and wonder. He had seen things no human was meant to see, yet the creature in his barn still lived, still waited, still begged for an end. John dragged himself outside into the pale dawn. The air was cool, the fields quiet, but peace no longer existed in his world. He looked toward the barn, the chains locked across the door, and knew he could not avoid it. The creature held more answers, and until he understood, he would never find rest. He carried his lantern back to the barn, unlocked the chains, and stepped inside. The air was thick, colder than the morning outside. The blanket rose and fell slowly with the dragon's breath, and the faint red glow pulsed beneath it. John stood in silence for a moment, gathering his courage. Then he whispered, "If you want me to kill you, then show me why. Show me everything." The dragon's eye opened slowly, fixing on him with a tired gaze. Its deep voice rumbled through the barn. "You want truth. You will bear it." The words had barely left the creature when John's vision blurred. His lantern dropped to the floor, but before it struck, the world around him was gone. He was standing under a sky filled with stars, brighter and sharper than any he had ever seen. His feet rested on black stone, and towering above him were creatures like the one in his barn. Dragons of enormous size, wings stretching wider than mountains, their scales glowing like suns. They flew through the air with a sound like thunder, their roars shaking the sky. Armies below cheered, raising weapons made of strange metals. John could feel their hunger for power, their joy in conquest. He staggered backward, clutching his head, but the vision dragged him deeper. He saw fleets of ships rising into the heavens, sleek and silver, engines blazing. The dragons soared beside them, guardians and destroyers alike, their fire lighting up the void of space. He saw them descend on other worlds, burning forests, cities, oceans. He heard the screams of alien people, the clash of weapons, the roar of fire. John cried out, but the vision did not stop. He saw the dragon in his barn, younger, stronger, flying at the head of the swarm, wings blazing, fire pouring from its mouth. It was a conqueror, feared and unstoppable. But then the images changed. John saw another world, smaller, weaker, its people cowering in terror. He felt the dragon's thoughts, hesitation, doubt. He saw it turn against the orders of its kind, refusing to burn, refusing to kill. He felt the anger of the others, their betrayal sharp and merciless. He saw the dragon chained, wounded, cast out, hurled through the void to a lonely exile. He felt the endless centuries of silence, the crushing weight of guilt, the slow decay of strength, the hunger, the sorrow. John fell to his knees in the vision, his chest heaving, his face wet with tears he did not know had fallen. The images faded, and suddenly he was back in the barn, the lantern still glowing faintly on the floor, the dragon's eye staring down at him. John gasped, clutching his chest. "I saw it," he whispered. "I saw everything." The dragon's voice rumbled low. "Now, you know." John trembled, torn apart by what he had seen. "You destroyed so many," he said, his voice cracking. "You were a monster, but you tried to stop. You turned against them. And they punished you." The dragon's eye blinked once, slowly, heavy with exhaustion. Too late, too weak, too broken. John sat on the floor, his rifle forgotten by the door. His hands shook as he tried to make sense of it. The creature before him was both destroyer and victim, both guilty and betrayed. He felt pity and fear at the same time, his mind struggling to balance the truth. The dragon shifted slightly, the blanket sliding a little, revealing more of its scales. They glowed faintly like embers, beautiful and terrifying. "Why show me this?" John asked. "Why me? I am no one. Just a farmer." The dragon's voice rumbled again, weaker now. "Because you are here. You see. You choose." John's chest tightened. The weight of those words pressed down on him harder than the visions. He whispered, "If I kill you, maybe the danger ends. If I spare you, maybe they come. Either way, I am only a man. How can I carry this?" The dragon's breath rattled, heavy and slow. "All life carries choices. Yours, heavier." John bowed his head, his thoughts a storm. He could still see the burning worlds, the falling ships, the betrayal, the exile. He could still feel the dragon's loneliness pressing into his own heart. He wanted to scream, to demand that someone else make the choice for him, but he knew no one could. He was alone in this. He looked up again, his voice soft. "You are not just a beast. You are not just a monster. You are something more." The dragon gave a faint rumble that might have been laughter, though it was bitter and broken. "Monster, savior, both, none. End me, and it ends. Spare me, and danger comes." John clenched his fists, tears stinging his eyes. His fear and compassion battled inside him like fire and storm. He wanted to run, but his heart chained him to the spot. He whispered, "I cannot kill you. Not yet. Not like this. Not when I see what you have suffered." The dragon's eye closed again, its glow dimming. Weak human, strong heart. John sat there long into the night, staring at the creature, the visions replaying again and again in his head. He knew now the truth of the dragon's memory, the story of conquest and betrayal, the warning of what might come. And though fear filled every corner of his soul, he also knew something else. The choice before him was not only about the dragon. It was about himself, about humanity, about whether compassion could survive in the face of terror. John woke the next day with the weight of the visions pressing against his mind like chains he could not remove. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, his hands still trembling as if the memories of burning worlds had burned into his very flesh. He went outside to work his fields, but found no peace among the rows of corn and wheat. The air felt too still, the sky too sharp, as if the world itself waited for something. His gaze drifted again and again to the barn, to the chains across the door that did little to hold back the presence inside. At last he threw down his tools and marched back, the decision heavy in his chest. When he unlocked the barn and stepped inside, the familiar cold air struck him, thick with sorrow. The dragon's eye opened slowly, its glow faint but steady. John stood with his fists clenched, his voice shaking. You showed me what you did. You showed me your wars. But you did not tell me what happens now. You said if I do not kill you danger will come. Tell me the truth. All of it. For a long moment the barn was silent except for the dragon's labored breathing. Then the voice came, deep and heavy like distant thunder. They search. Always they search. They will find me. And when they do, they will find this world. John's heart slammed against his chest. His throat tightened as he stepped closer. Who are they? Your kind. The others who punished you. The dragons I narrowed, sorrow burning within its glow. Yes. My kind. The great swarm. They hunt, to erase weakness. I am weakness. They cannot allow it to remain. They will come. And when they see this place, they will not leave it. John staggered back, his breath coming fast. Images of burning worlds returned to his mind, forests turning to ash, oceans boiling, cities crumbling beneath fire and shadow. He clutched the wooden beam beside him, his body trembling. No, he whispered. Not here. Not Earth. The dragon lowered its head slightly, the blanket sliding across its vast form. Then end me. End me now. While there is time. John pressed his hands against his face, shaking his head violently. I cannot. Not like this. I need to know. I need to understand. If I kill you and they still come, then it was for nothing. The dragon's rumble deepened, frustration mingling with despair. You hesitate, and your people will burn. John turned away, pacing the barn, his boots scuffing the dusty floor. His mind felt torn in two. He wanted to protect his world, his family, everything he had ever known. But how could he murder something that was no longer fighting, no longer destroying, something that seemed broken and begging for release? He stopped, his back to the creature, his voice raw. If they come, how long until they arrive? The dragon's breath rattled, the sound like a storm beyond mountains. Not long. They are close. My light, my memory, it calls them. John's body froze. The thought that even now creatures like this one were flying toward Earth sent a chill through his bones. He turned slowly, meeting the dragon's eye again. Then we must hide you. If I cannot kill you, then I must hide you. The dragon gave a low rumble, bitter and hopeless. You cannot. Their eyes pierce the stars. Their hunger never ends. They will come. John clenched his fists tighter, his nails biting into his skin. Then I will fight. If I must stand alone, I will fight them. The dragon gave a sound like broken laughter, deep and hollow. A farmer, with hands of earth, against fire that devours sons. Foolish, but strong of heart. John stepped closer, his voice trembling with both fear and stubborn courage. You told me choice is mine. Then I choose not to kill you yet. I choose to learn more, to prepare, to protect. If they come, I will not let my world fall without a fight. The dragon's eye closed halfway, glowing faintly in the dark. Then you have chosen death. Yours. Your people's. All. John's jaw tightened. He would not let the words crush him. He had spent his life facing storms, droughts, sickness. This was greater than all of it. But he could not surrender. He whispered fiercely, if humanity is to die, then we die standing. Not kneeling. The dragon opened its eye wider, the faint red glow flickering. For the first time John thought he saw something new within it, not just sorrow, but respect, faint and uncertain. The creature's voice rumbled softer. Perhaps, not all humans weak. John lowered himself onto a wooden stool by the wall, his hands trembling as he pressed them together. His voice dropped low. Tell me everything then. Tell me how they come. Tell me how they fight. Tell me what we face. If I cannot kill you, then let me use your knowledge. The dragon remained silent for a long time, as if weighing the man's request. Then, slowly it spoke. They are legion. Ships like shadows across suns. They ride fire, they ride silence. They burn what resists. They chain what submits. No one escapes. John shuddered at the words but forced himself to listen. And their weakness? He asked quickly. Everything has a weakness. The dragon's head shifted beneath the blanket, its scales rasping softly against wood. Weakness, pride. They believe none can resist. Strike their pride, and they falter. But you are small. Your people are still bound to one world. They will crush you before you even rise. John leaned forward, his hands gripping his knees tightly. Then teach me. Teach me how to strike pride. Teach me how to resist. If you want me to make a choice, then give me something worth choosing. The dragon's eye narrowed, glowing faintly brighter. You would learn from a monster? John's gaze did not waver. I would learn from anyone who can help me save my people. The barn grew silent again, the cold air pressing heavy against John's skin. At last the dragon gave a slow, weary rumble. Very well, farmer. I will teach you. But know this, knowledge has a cost. And when the time comes, you may beg for death. John swallowed hard, his heart pounding, but he did not turn away. He whispered, then let it be so. I would rather die fighting than live blind. The dragon closed its eye again, its glow pulsing slowly in the dark. Then listen well. The storm is coming. The days that followed were unlike anything John had ever known. He was no longer only a farmer, no longer only a man tending to fields and animals. Each morning he woke with dread, and each night he fell into uneasy sleep, but between those hours he returned again and again to the barn, where the dragon waited. The creature was weak in body but strong in memory, its mind filled with the knowledge of countless battles fought among the stars. At first John struggled to understand. The dragon spoke in simple words, its voice slow and heavy, yet the ideas were far beyond anything John had known. It spoke of formations of ships, of weapons that bent light, of fires that could split mountains. John could not imagine such things, yet the dragon insisted he listen. You must learn the mind of war, it rumbled, its eye glowing faintly in the shadows. Not weapons alone. Weapons are tools. Mind is the true blade. John nodded though his chest was tight with fear. Then teach me the mind. The dragon's voice filled the barn. First rule, never show strength when weak. Never show weakness when strong. They will always test. They will always press. Let them believe one thing while you prepare another. John wrote the words down in an old notebook he had used for farm expenses. His handwriting shook, but he forced the letters to be clear. He looked up again. What else? The dragon's breathing rattled, then it spoke again. Second rule, unity. A single human hand cannot stop the swarm. But many hands, many hearts, can wound even giants. Divide them, and you strike pride. Unite yourselves, and you strike fear. John's heart clenched. He thought of his neighbors, of the small town down the road, of families who knew nothing of the storm waiting beyond the stars. How could he ever unite them? They would laugh at him, call him mad. But he kept writing. He could not stop now. Days passed. The dragon spoke of ambushes, of feints, of striking not where the enemy expected but where they least prepared. It taught John the importance of patience, of silence, of waiting for the single moment that could change everything. John began to see patterns in the world around him. When he walked his fields, he noticed how crows circled before diving, how wolves attacked sheep in the dark instead of daylight, how even nature fought with cunning. He began to understand what the dragon meant, that war was not only fire and death, it was thought, it was deception, it was choosing the moment to strike. At night John practiced with his rifle in the field, aiming at distant stones, training his eye to see further, training his hand to be steady even when fear shook him. The dragon watched through the cracks of the barn wall, its single glowing eye never leaving him. You are small, it whispered one night as John reloaded. But small can strike where large cannot. Never forget. John felt his heart stir with something he had not felt since this nightmare began. Hope, faint but real. On the 5th night the dragon called him inside again. Now you must learn fear, it rumbled. John frowned. I already know fear. I live in it every day. The dragon's eye burned brighter. No. You taste fear. But you do not master it. To master fear is to bend it into weapon. Yours. Theirs. Before John could reply, the dragon opened its mouth slightly. A low growl rumbled, the sound shaking the barn like thunder. John froze, his heart leaping into his throat. His legs trembled, sweat poured from his brow, his instincts screamed at him to run. But he forced himself to stand, gripping the rifle so tightly his knuckles turned white. The growl deepened, the air thick with power, the eye burning red. John felt his soul quake, but he did not move. At last the sound faded, and silence returned. The dragon spoke softly. Good. You do not run. You face. John's chest heaved, his body trembling, but he met the creature's gaze. I will not run. Not anymore. The dragon lowered its head, smoke curling faintly from its nostrils. Then you begin to learn. Over the next days the dragon tested him again and again. It filled the barn with illusions, fragments of memory pressed into John's mind, armies charging, skies burning, ships falling from the heavens. John's heart pounded, his breath broke, but he stood his ground each time. He learned to see through the terror, to focus not on his fear but on his choices within it. Slowly he began to change. He was still a farmer, still a man of earth and field, but his eyes grew sharper, his mind clearer. The dragon watched with something like approval. One evening as the sun dipped low, John asked quietly, Why help me now? Why teach me instead of begging for death? The dragon's eye flickered, dim and weary. Because, perhaps you are different. Perhaps humans are different. If you learn, if you rise, maybe you can stand where others fell. John swallowed hard. The responsibility felt like a mountain on his shoulders, but he could not turn back. He whispered, Then I will learn. I will fight. For my world, for my people. The dragon gave a slow rumble, half a sigh, half a growl. Then hurry, farmer. The storm draws near. Soon, the sky will burn. That night John could not sleep. He stood in his field staring at the stars, notebook clutched in his hands, the dragon's words echoing in his head. Somewhere out there, creatures of fire and pride were hunting. Somewhere beyond the silence of the night, the storm already moved toward Earth. And John knew the time for training was short. The morning began like any other, with soft mist hanging low over the fields and the sound of birds calling from the trees. But John felt something wrong in the air. His chest was tight as if a storm pressed against his lungs. He looked at the sky and for a moment saw only gray clouds drifting slowly, yet his heart told him danger had already arrived. He set down his tools and walked to the barn, unlocking the chains with shaking hands. The dragon's eye was open, brighter than before, burning with tension. You feel it, the creature rumbled. John nodded slowly. Something's coming, isn't it? The dragon gave a heavy growl. Not coming. Here. The words froze John's blood. He rushed outside, his boots pounding the dirt, his gaze fixed on the heavens. At first there was nothing but shifting clouds. Then the light dimmed, not from storm clouds but from something larger, something blocking the sun. His mouth went dry as he saw them, dark shapes moving high above, like shadows gliding across the sky, silent but massive. There were 3 at first, then 6, then more, until the sky seemed covered by wings of metal and fire. The ground trembled faintly beneath his feet. John's knees threatened to give way but he forced himself to stand. His voice cracked as he whispered, They've found you. Behind him the dragon's voice thundered, shaking the barn walls. Not me. You. They have found your world. John felt sick, his stomach twisting as he watched one of the shapes break from the others and descend slowly. It moved without sound, cutting through the clouds like a blade, and for a moment he thought it was a mountain falling from the sky. It was a ship, massive and black, its surface shimmering like scales of steel, its edges glowing faint red as though fire lived within it. The birds scattered in panic, the animals in the barn screamed, the earth itself seemed to groan beneath its shadow. John stumbled back, his rifle clutched tight though he knew it meant nothing against such power. The dragon's growl deepened, filled with sorrow. The swarm begins. John turned, his voice desperate. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fight them. The dragon's eye narrowed, glowing fierce. You cannot fight them here. You must watch. You must see how they strike. Learn their pride. John's chest heaved with anger. Watch. While they destroy everything. The dragon's gaze did not move. Yes. For now. Strike too soon and all is lost. Strike when pride blinds them. The ship above released a sound like thunder, though no storm cloud stirred. It was not thunder but a voice, deep and mechanical, echoing across the fields in words John did not know. The ground shook, windows shattered, animals bolted from their pens. John clutched his ears but the sound carved into his skull, alien and merciless. Then silence fell again, thick and crushing. Slowly the ship descended lower, until its shadow covered John's farm completely. A beam of light split the air, blinding and white, striking the ground just beyond the barn. Soil lifted into the sky, rocks cracked, the air burned with heat. John fell to his knees, coughing from smoke and ash. His world felt as though it were ending before his eyes. Yet through the terror, a thought pierced his mind. This was not destruction. Not yet. It was a warning, a display. They wanted to show power, to make humans kneel before they struck. Pride, the dragon had said. Pride was their weakness. John forced himself to his feet, wiping blood from his nose, and stared into the burning light. His voice trembled but carried strength. I will not kneel. The words were small, swallowed by the roar of the ship above, but they were real. He felt them deep in his bones. Behind him the dragon's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Then you begin to see. They show you strength to make you break. Do not break. More ships appeared now, their black shapes covering the sky like a swarm of locusts. Towns beyond the horizon cried out in panic, their voices faint but rising. John could hear faint booms of distant strikes, faint screams carried on the wind. His people were seeing what he saw, an enemy too vast, too powerful. He thought of his neighbors, his friends, families who had never held a weapon. Fear clawed at him, urging him to run, to hide. But he remembered the dragon's lessons. Fear could be weapon, pride could be trap. He clenched his fists and forced himself to stand taller. They will not take my world without a fight, he whispered. The dragon shifted under its blanket, chains rattling. Fight, yes. But not now. Survive. Watch. Gather. The true strike comes later. John turned, fire in his eyes despite the terror shaking him. Then teach me faster. Because they are here now. Above, the first ship released smaller shapes, craft that darted like wasps, scanning the fields, their lights sweeping across the earth. John ducked behind a fence, heart pounding as one of the craft passed over him. Its light burned across his skin, hot and searching, but it moved on, chasing shadows across the farm. He exhaled shakily, sweat pouring down his face. He realized then that his farm, his quiet life, his simple world, had become the first battlefield. And though he was only a farmer, he had been chosen to see, to learn, to resist. The sky burned above him, filled with fire and shadow, but his heart refused to bow. For the first time he felt not just fear but anger, a fire rising in his chest, a spark against the darkness. He whispered to himself, if they think we are weak, if they think we will break, then they will be wrong. The dragon's voice reached him, low and heavy, carrying both warning and respect. Then hold fast, farmer. The storm has begun. The night after the sky burned was the longest of John's life. The ships hung above the land like dark suns, their lights flashing across the earth, their smaller crafts swarming like insects in every direction. Fires glowed on the horizon where towns had been struck, and the air carried the smell of smoke and ash. John sat in the barn, his rifle across his knees, staring at the dragon. The creature's eye burned faintly, weary but unbroken. "The moment is near," it whispered. John shook his head, voice tight. "What can I do? Look at them. They are too many. Too strong. I am only one man." The dragon's chains rattled as it lifted its head. "One man is nothing. One man with a people behind him is everything. But you must choose. If you end me, my knowledge dies. If you keep me, you must use me." John's chest tightened. For weeks the dragon had whispered to him, taught him, tested him. Part of him had wanted to end it, to silence the terrible voice and bury the nightmare. But another part now knew he needed it. He needed the enemy's mind to fight the enemy's pride. He clenched his fists. "I will not kill you. Not yet. I will fight with you." The dragon's eye glowed brighter. "Then listen. The swarm is proud. They will strike first at symbols, not strength. They will want to break hearts, not only walls. Tonight they will come here. To you. To this farm. They know you saw. They know you stood." John's blood ran cold but his jaw set firm. "Then let them come." Hours passed in silence, broken only by distant thunder and the faint hum of ships moving above. John moved through his farm, setting traps, placing barrels, sharpening blades. He whispered to himself every lesson the dragon had taught: hide strength, strike when unseen, turn fear into weapon. When the first enemy came, it was not a ship but a creature, tall and lean, its skin dark like steel, its eyes glowing like embers. It moved with arrogance, its steps slow, as though the land already belonged to it. John's heart hammered, but he waited, hidden behind the barn. The creature paused, sniffing the air, then turned its head. In that instant John pulled the trigger. The rifle roared, the shot striking the creature's chest. It staggered, not dead but surprised. Surprise. John remembered the lesson. He fired again, aiming higher, and this time the bullet pierced its eye. The creature fell, its body twitching, smoke rising from its wound. John's breath shook, but he stood tall. For the first time he had killed not an animal, not a shadow, but one of them. The dragon's voice rumbled softly from within the barn. "Good. They believe themselves gods. Now they bleed." More came. 3 this time, their shapes cutting across the night, their movements faster and sharper. John ran, leading them toward the traps he had set. As he ducked behind a broken fence, he kicked over a barrel filled with oil and lit it with a match. Flames roared, trapping the creatures in sudden fire. They screamed, not in pain but in rage, thrashing against the blaze. John raised his rifle and fired again and again until silence fell. Smoke filled his lungs, but he refused to fall. He had stood, and he had won, even if only for a moment. Then the ground shook, the air split with a roar. Above, a ship descended, larger than the barn, its lights blazing white. John fell to his knees as the wind of its engines tore across his farm. His crops burned, his fences shattered, his land cracked under its weight. From the ship a voice boomed, cold and full of scorn. John could not understand the words, but he felt their meaning: mockery, threat, promise of ruin. The dragon's chains rattled hard. "This is the moment. They believe you weak, alone. Show them fire." John's hands trembled. "How? I have nothing left." The dragon's eye flared. "You have me." John turned, his heart stopping. "What do you mean?" The dragon lifted its head high, chains breaking one by one with deafening cracks. "You free me. I burn. I fall with them. But you must choose now. I cannot rise again." John's breath caught. To free the dragon was to unleash fire upon fire, death upon death. It would mean the creature's end, perhaps his too. But it would also mean striking the swarm where they least expected. Here, by a farmer's hand, by the pride they thought they already owned. He closed his eyes, hearing the voices of his neighbors, his people, the cries of children in the burning towns. He opened them again with fire in his gaze. Then burn with me. He struck the chains with his tools, each blow ringing like thunder. The dragon roared, the sound splitting the night, its body rising as iron fell away. Its wings spread wide, torn and scarred but mighty, its chest glowing with ancient fire. The ship above hesitated, perhaps for the first time uncertain. The dragon's voice shook the earth. Pride blinds you. Now see death. It unleashed a torrent of flame, fire brighter than the sun, striking the ship full in its glowing heart. The sky exploded with light, metal screaming, engines bursting. The ship twisted, burning, falling in ruin upon the fields. John was thrown to the ground, his body bruised and bleeding, but he lifted his head in time to see the ship crash in fire, its swarm of smaller craft scattering in panic. The dragon collapsed beside the barn, smoke rising from its wounds, its breathing shallow. John crawled to it, tears blinding his eyes. "Stay with me, please." The dragon's eye flickered weakly. "No. My fire ends. But yours begins. Remember the lessons. Teach them. Unite them. Fight. Make them fear you." John clutched its scaled head, his chest breaking. "I will. I promise." The dragon gave a final shuddering breath, smoke curling from its nostrils, and the great eye dimmed into darkness. Silence fell heavy, broken only by distant cries and the crackle of flames. John knelt in the ashes, staring at the wreck of the ship, at the shattered fields, at the body of the dragon. His heart ached with grief but burned with new strength. The swarm had come to break him, to make him kneel, but instead they had lost pride, lost blood, lost one of their great machines to a single farmer and a dying dragon. Slowly John rose, his rifle in hand, his face hardened. The night was not the end. It was the beginning. He looked at the burning horizon and whispered, "We are not prey. We are not weak. We will fight." And in the distance, as if carried by the smoke, other voices began to rise. The people had seen the fire, the fall of the ship. They had seen that even gods could bleed. The war of humanity had begun.